Ladies and gentlemen, some absolutely massive economic news just broke, and I'll tell you what, this is a game changer for the United States. You see, after weeks of stonewalling and posturing, the European Union has just blinked. They've agreed to pause their retaliatory tariffs on American goods for 90 days until July 14th so that they can renegotiate a brand new trade deal with the Trump administration. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. President Trump's reciprocal tariffs have officially brought the European Union to the negotiating table. They're suspending their own tariffs, stepping back from the confrontation, and admitting that the current economic world order has changed, and it has changed in America's favor. In truth, what we're witnessing here isn't just a trade negotiation, it's the return of American dominance in global economics. After decades of one-sided trade deals that hollowed out our middle class, Trump's tariffs have just flipped the script. In fact, take a look at this.
In terms of escalation, unfortunately, the biggest offender in the global trading system is China, and they're the only country who's escalated. And I can tell the rest of the world that I'm not sure whether it was the prime minister or the economic minister in Spain made some comments this morning. Oh, well, maybe we should align ourselves more with China. That would be cutting your own throat, because I can tell you that these Chinese exports that the U.S. tariff wall is going to keep out, that China, for all of you who can remember that Disney movie of the brooms carrying the buckets of water, that is a Chinese business model. It never stops. They just keep producing and producing and dumping, and it's going somewhere. And I think, Rob, at the end of the day, that we can probably reach a deal with our allies, with the other countries that have been long-term. They've been good military allies, not perfect economic allies, and then we can approach China as a group.
So folks, President Trump's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent lays it out pretty clearly. This entire situation isn't just about the European Union, it's about confronting China too, and the only way to do that effectively is for America and Europe to act as a united front. So when the European Union pauses its tariffs to talk things over, let's be very clear, it's not because they want to, it's because they have to. They're terrified of the fallout that President Trump's strategic tariffs have already begun to cause. Their industries depend on the U.S. market, and Trump just made it painfully obvious. If Europe wants access to American consumers, they're going to have to play by our rules. So, in reality, this 90-day pause, it's not a gift from Europe, no, it's a white flag. A temporary ceasefire while the European Union scrambles to realign itself with an America that's finally putting its own interests first. Now, folks, take a look at this great breakdown of President Trump's entire economic approach.
Just finally, I want to get your thoughts on something you told me, John, and Lisa in February, which was that in your old world, you would be that person with your ear against the door trying to understand what policymakers were doing so then you could predict where financial markets would go. In this moment where we hear from top executives constantly, today it was the Goldman Sachs CEO, last week it was Jamie Dimon, and this uncertainty, especially around tariff policy, what advice would you be giving to your old self?
To look at the whole policy, because again, not you, but others in the media can pick one factor. So right now it's tariff, but we have. You mentioned we have tax coming up. We have deregulation. So it's a mini leg stool, and I would try to think about what's happening. The tariff sequencing was always going to be first. The tax bill's going very well, and I think I've been pleasantly surprised at how quickly that's moving along. And then deregulation from our area on the financial side and in the rest of the economy, that takes a little longer, but that will start kicking in September, October, in the fall, and those are going to be very powerful.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there was Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent again explaining that tariffs are just one component of President Trump's broader economic revival plan. We're talking about cutting red tape, slashing regulation, and driving energy prices down to make America the most attractive place in the world to do business. So, in other words, the tariffs are only the beginning. The real goal here is a complete re-engineering of our economy where businesses thrive, energy is affordable, and American workers are finally protected instead of being sacrificed. And you know what? Look at the ripple effects already. Europe is now openly acknowledging the threat that China poses not just to us, but to them also. Trump's economic pressure is pulling our so-called allies out of their denial and forcing them to choose a side. And ladies and gentlemen, so far that side is the American side. Now, take a look at what Stephen Miller had to say about all of this just yesterday afternoon.
All I want to say is that America is in the best position under President Trump to dominate the economic future because of how we are unleashing deregulation, exploring and opening American energy, including trillions of dollars in clean coal, and how we are on the verge of passing a tax bill that will provide economic certainty and make America into the most desirable place on planet Earth. To shore jobs, invest, expand, hire, and grow. This is an economic strategy. Deal with China's abuses, deregulate, explode American energy production, create the most favorable tax system for American development on the face of the earth. That is the recipe for radical American success, Maria.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Miller just drove it home. America's goal is to become the most desirable location on Earth for business. Low energy prices, minimal red tape, and protection from unfair foreign competition. That's the America First economic model, and it's already winning. But you know what? Let's talk about what's really at stake here. The European Union's sudden willingness to back off is proof that President Trump's tariffs actually work. They're not just some dusty, archaic trade policy. No, they're unmatched leverage, a pressure valve that forces other nations to the table without firing a single shot. In fact, for years, many of our politicians have told us that trade tariffs are dangerous, outdated, even counterproductive. They said that we would lose jobs here in America, start trade wars, cause chaos. But here we are. The European Union is folding and the U.S. economy is still going strong. And so really, this is what happens when we finally stop letting foreign nations walk all over us. This is what happens when we stand up and say, no more. It's time to put America first. No more selling out our workers. No more one-sided trade deals. No more pretending that globalism is the way to go. Because, folks, make no mistake, the European Union doesn't get to dictate the terms of this deal anymore. They are done ripping us off. Now, President Trump is calling the shots. And the only way forward for Europe is through a deal that prioritizes American businesses and American families. Ladies and gentlemen, here's the reality. There's been an economic war going on for decades, and now, finally, under President Trump's leadership, we're back on the offense. For the first time in decades, we're seeing a president who isn't afraid to wield America's economic power, who isn't afraid to make foreign powers uncomfortable, and who isn't afraid to demand what America deserves. Because, hey, let's be honest, many of our so-called allies have been freeloading off of our markets and our generosity for way too long. So pretty much, President Trump's tariffs are an invoice, and Europe just realized that they need to start paying. The America First movement has always been about more than just politics. It's about restoring economic fairness on a global level. It's about giving American workers a fighting chance in a rigged global economy. And this whole situation with Europe, this is what it looks like when that movement, the America First movement, starts to win. So to all of the critics and all of the career bureaucrats and globalist elites that have told us for decades now that tariffs are too insane to work, well, look around. The European Union's economy is stumbling, their leaders are now panicking, and now their only hope is to strike a deal with the one man that they said would ruin the global economy, President Donald J. Trump. So folks, I'll tell you what we're all witnessing is a masterclass in deal-making. President Trump laid down the pressure, he held firm, and he forced a 27-nation bloc to hit pause and come to the table on his terms. The global order is changing, folks, and I'll tell you what, for the first time in a long time, we are putting America first. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we wrap up with today's video, I want to say real quick that I've actually gone ahead and made a community Facebook page where I'll be posting additional news and updates as it relates to all of this. So hey, if you guys use Facebook, check out the pinned comment down below and give that page a follow. But everyone, that is going to be a wrap for today's video, so please go down below and drop a comment. Let me know what you think about all of this. Please like the video while you're down there. If you guys enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. Thank you all very much for tuning in today, and of course, as always, stay safe.